In recent weeks, Saskatchewan's provincial opposition, the NDP, has renewed its call for rent control, arguing that rising rental prices are putting too much pressure on tenants, especially in high demand urban centers. The party has proposed measures to limit annual rent increases and enhance tenant protection, citing affordability concerns and growing public frustration with housing costs. Critics, however, warn that such policies may discourage investments in new rental housing, reduce maintenance incentives, and ultimately worsen supply shortages. To help us understand what's at stake, we are joined by Landon Field, CEO of Rental Housing Saskatchewan, to discuss the potential impacts of rent control on landlords, renters, and the broader housing market.
This is the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast.
As always, Landon, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back.
All right, Landon, let's just get right into it. From your perspective, what is driving the NDP's push for rent control in Saskatchewan right now?
Well, I think right across the country, affordability is definitely a top concern for people, going about their day-to-day lives. They're faced with, paying their bills, their groceries, their rent costs. And I think it's important to acknowledge that no one is immune from the affordability crisis that we see right now. And that includes operators. I mean, I don't have to tell you or anyone listening to this program, the industry in terms of real estate and rental housing providers have had to take on a lot of increased costs over the last number of years, specifically since the end of the pandemic. I mean, we're talking about increases in utility costs, insurance, the cost of general maintenance, repairs, mortgage rates are being renewed and interest rates are changing. So all of those costs add up, and then you add in property taxes and just kind of day-to-day employment costs. It's easy to kind of run up that ledger. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that everyone across the board is dealing with affordability. So we want to highlight practical solutions, really focus on some supply side solutions to kind of solve this crisis.
Yes, it's so obvious that you can kind of see both sides of this argument here. You have a lot of folks who live on fixed incomes. And so when we do feel the bite of inflation at the grocery store, at the gas station, and then in rent, it's very tough. But on the other side of that, you have the provider of that housing whose costs are drastically rising. I just did a story about, Canadian real estate and Toronto versus Vancouver. And it doesn't matter where you go, everything costs more right now. And it's obvious that if you're running a business, the end result is the product has to get a little bit more expensive. Landon, just walk me through, are there specific regions or cities in the province where affordability has become a more serious concern, or is this becoming a province-wide issue?
I think it's definitely different in different areas of the province, but definitely highlighted in our major urban centers. In Saskatchewan and across Canada, right now, people are looking to say yes to housing, whether that's single family detached homes, apartment, or purpose-built rental construction. There's definitely just a need for more housing supply across the continuum. And we know that those projects don't just appear overnight. Lots of times they're years in the making. And we do see a lot of purpose-built rental construction in the pipeline right now. I'm talking hundreds of units coming online in Saskatoon and Regina in the next number of months, in the next 2 years. Our members across the province continue to do really important work when it comes to building, providing, and managing high-quality rental homes across our province. And in different municipalities, over this summer, I've really gone out and visited members where they are in their communities, whether that's Moose Jaw, we're going to PA and North Battleford and Yorkton this month. So we're really meeting people where they're at. And we are seeing that different communities have different trends, but there is still a need for more types of housing right across the housing continuum. And what I mean by that is we not only need more market rentals, we also need more affordable rentals, transitional housing, more supports for those with more complex needs. So right across the board, we're seeing a demand for those housing needs. And we need to focus on solutions that incentivize building and kind of protect Saskatchewan's economic advantage.
I feel like you kind of answered a little part of our next question in here, but just walk us through what are some of the potential unintended consequences of rent control that you believe policymakers and the public should be aware of? And the reason I say is
Mhm.
kind of connected is because you mentioned that rental housing providers do provide such an important role in bringing more stock onto the market, and just expand upon this about some of the negatives that can come from rent control.
Yeah, I think, most simply, speaking to just some smaller investors, like if you have, as an example, one or two rental properties that you have long-term tenants in, and they're, happy to have a high quality place to live. And then at the end of the year, you get your property tax increase, your utility increase, your mortgage was renewed. And let's say your costs went up 7% that year. But all of a sudden, in a market, where the government is dictating that your rent can only go up, 2 or 3%, as we see in other provinces, what happens with the rest of that cost? It's just expected that as an industry we're just supposed to take that on. It doesn't work in reality. So while it may be well intentioned, we don't have to look far to other jurisdictions where we have seen some unintended consequences of this policy. And I'll just note, Ron, that we are currently working with a research company to do a nonpartisan report on the unintended consequences of rent control, a jurisdictional scan that will evaluate and compare Saskatchewan's rental market and our policies with the rest of the country. But we do see in BC and Ontario, they consistently have the highest rent prices, and yet they have restrictive rent control policies. In Saskatchewan, we continue to have some of the most affordable rentals in the country, and that's according to rentals.ca and Statistics Canada, that consistently show the market dictating the price of rent. And so when there are more available units for renters, for tenants, for families, when they have those choices, they're going to choose, the best option for them. And in most cases, that means the most affordable option, which means our providers have to be competitive and provide incentives. And so we don't see that when we have a shortage of supply. We are going to see a number of new rental construction come online, we'll see more supply, and then that will lead to more options for families in our province. But some of the unintended consequences that you mentioned really means, a lack of incentive or a lack of funds to reinvest into existing rental stock. Rent control policies would decimate the industry here in Saskatchewan because it would remove the ability to keep our existing rental stock protected and invest in repairs and maintenance. And what we see in other provinces are, high income renters are able to afford rental construction, and specifically those newer units, while lower or middle income renters have zero availability or mobility across the housing continuum. So some of those consequences we'll highlight in further detail in this report in September. But overall, it's maybe a well-intentioned policy, but there are much better solutions, and we need to protect Saskatchewan's economic advantage. And what we're doing right now, I think the data shows it's working.
Real estate investing does not have to be a full-time job. Randall, Hoeber, and Boys Group Realty provide complete property management services in Yorkton and surrounding areas, allowing investors to enjoy passive income without the headaches of day-to-day management. From finding tenants to handling maintenance and rent collection. Whether you own a property or are just getting started in the market, Randall, Hoeber, and Boys Group Realty makes it simple. Call Randall Hoeber at 306-782-1323 or email info@ralixenterprises.com to take the next step towards hands-free real estate investing. Your property, our expertise. Whether it's your home, business, or farm, Pioneer Solar and Renewables has you covered. As leaders in residential, commercial, and agriculture solar solutions, they make clean energy easy and affordable. Visit pioneersolarenergy.com or give them a call to begin harnessing the power of the sun today. Are you investing in real estate? Let Krishna with Boys Group Realty take care of everything. Finding properties, purchasing, renovations, leasing, and management, leaving you to focus on building wealth. Whether it's a single rental or an entire portfolio, serving Saskatoon and surrounding areas, helping maximize cash flows and minimize stress. If you're looking for an expert to manage your investments, reach out today, home@meetkrishna.ca.
I feel kind of at the crux of this, Landon, and correct me if I'm picking up on this incorrectly, that a lot of this just comes down to supply And the worry with rent control being adopted is it's going to limit supply, it's going to
Mhm.
limit the amount of units coming on board. And at a time where Saskatchewan is still desperately in need of more supply, not only for rental units, but folks who are looking to buy properties, any policy that limits building and limits the supply coming on would be a negative. Would you say that that's maybe the number one thing that you're worried about with something like this?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I do want to say, vacancies are stabilizing post COVID right now. We're coming, as I mentioned a couple of times, visiting with members who are building. A lot of those units are going to come online. Vacancies are stabilizing in Saskatchewan. We saw historic low vacancies. I think, one thing I wanted to note was that rental inventory in Saskatchewan peaked in the 90s. We saw, high vacancies, low rents, and there was really no incentive to build new stock. And so what happened is eventually vacancy caught up. There was no new rental stock, and then we fell behind. And so if there is no incentive to build, what we see is those vacancies continue to reach a dangerous level, and rents will continue to increase. But as you mentioned, you're completely right. If we focus on incentivizing supply right across the housing continuum, not just market rents, which is definitely needed across the province, but all types of housing, uh, some of these issues will begin to see some relief. And even in the next couple of months, as these units come online, we will continue to see those positive trends in our province.
Let's speak to the concern that's being brought forward by the NDP. If we're not going to implement something like rent control, what
Mhm.
alternative strategies should the province be considering to address the housing affordability issue?
Yeah, and as I mentioned kind of throughout this, and as you've touched on as well, we really need to focus on supply. Now is the time that Canadians and people in Saskatchewan are looking to say yes to housing. They're looking for solutions to the housing crisis. I think everyone understands, just speaking to people on the street, that there is a shortage of housing. I mean, talking to realtors, as you know very well, we're at low inventory right across the board. So that means families looking for homes, people looking for places to rent. There isn't the availability that's needed. So we do have a lot of that under construction, but we don't just need to, as soon as they come online, we need to stop what we're doing and the problem is solved. We need to really focus on long term incentives. Um, right now, the NDP touches on affordability, and we know that there is currently the Saskatchewan housing benefit that people can apply for. Maybe we need to look into a rental rebate or a rental subsidy specifically for, low or middle income families that they can apply for to kind of alleviate some of that pressure in the short term. But long term, we really need to focus on supply side solutions, because in other jurisdictions where rent control has been brought in, we've seen the rental stock deteriorate, the availability of units go down. Just quickly, I know this is a sidebar here, but I'll just note there was an interesting story in the Wall Street Journal this week or last week about Argentina, who had some of the world's strictest rent control policies. And what we saw was an increase in short term or Airbnb rentals and a complete decrease and drop off in availability of long term housing. They recently scrapped their rent control entirely, and they saw huge, like 180% increase in rental stock and availability, and prices actually went down. In Calgary and Saskatoon and Regina, rental prices go down. In other jurisdictions with rent controls, you're always guaranteeing that it's going up that amount, because as we mentioned at the beginning, providers are also facing increasing costs, and they need to make sure that they can budget that to continue to provide housing.
The best thing, or if you believe in kind of a free market economy, is that these things will balance themselves
Yeah.
out. And so by letting things run on a more free market style, just as you pointed out, in the 90s there was lots of available rentals, and so rents came down. So we're in a period right now where it's tough, but it's not always going to be like this. And
Right.
so it does kind of consistently be a what's on the horizon. And so right now we still really are in the middle of lacking supply of housing. But, this is a midterm issue. And, as long as we're kind of taking steps to address them that are not going to hurt things long term, which potentially rent control could do, that's ultimately the goal here, and kind of let the free market do what it needs to do.
You're absolutely correct. And I think, you also touched on, protecting renters. And in Saskatchewan, we do have a very strong Residential Tenancies Act. It is balanced between landlords and tenants. The ORT can solve those disputes that, renters and housing providers may have with each other. And again, doing a jurisdictional scan, our Office of Residential Tenancies, from our association's perspective, there are definitely changes we would like to see to help protect housing providers. But we are, completing decisions and holding hearings at a faster rate than other jurisdictions in the country. And so we do have a strong Residential Tenancies Act. And when it comes to rental guidelines, there are guidelines that housing providers must follow when it comes to rental increases, whether that is a fixed term tenancy lease renewal, or if you're on a month to month lease, you do need to follow the regulations that already exist, and they exist for a reason. And we've had these regulations in place for a number of years.
The Saskatchewan Realtors Association supports over 1,700 realtors across the province. Their members provide expert insights to help you navigate the market. Visit sra.ca for monthly stats, industry updates, and to find a realtor near you.
Landon, end us off with the work that you folks do at Rental Housing Saskatchewan. You help landlords and the province's rental providers give service, and just give us a little promotion for Rental Housing Saskatchewan.
Absolutely. So I'm extraordinarily proud to represent such hardworking people across this province, individual investors, property management staff, and firms and companies that continue to provide very high quality rental homes to tens of thousands of Saskatchewan families. So we represent over 1,000 individual landlords representing approximately 60,000 rental units in the province. We continue to provide educational opportunities, in-person training events, any type of resources and support to make sure that everyone is following the proper procedures. And I will just plug our new program, the LEAP program, which is the Legal Education Assistance Program. It is a certificate online course for housing providers that they can enroll in and understand the legal requirements and responsibilities of providing rental housing for people in this province. And so that program will be rolling out this fall. We're very excited about the work that we're doing.
Wonderful. If someone wants more information on Rental Housing Saskatchewan, where can they go to, or what resources do you have available?
Absolutely. So in terms of resources, if you need help with lease agreements, move in, move out, getting the right forms, or you just want to clarify something and give me a call, we're happy to chat. You can visit our website, rentalhousingsk.ca, to learn more information. And if you're an existing member, you'd like to refer some new housing providers to our growing network, that would be greatly appreciated. And we continue to kind of do that hard work each and every day on behalf of our members.
Wonderful. Landon, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, sharing your perspective on rent control. Thank you for the work that you do at Rental Housing Saskatchewan. We'll chat to you very soon.
Thanks so much. We'll see you again.
Thanks for tuning in to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. Do you need help with your next real estate transaction? Whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or investing in real estate, I am here to help you navigate the mortgage process in both Saskatchewan and Alberta, or connect you to a trusted professional. Feel free to send me an email at ron@ronqmortgage.ca or use the booking link to schedule a time to chat. Until next week, I'm Ron Quaroni, your Saskatchewan mortgage professional. Bye for now.